Memorial Day has passed, the Wanted special is over, and it's time for me to talk about it. I'm going to record these in such a way that they can be strung together into one larger review, for people who want to wait until Friday and get all of my views on all of the episodes all at once. That said, let's get started with Stuck Together, the first episode of the 5th season of Steven Universe. Now granted, I could have reviewed this episode a while ago, it's been online for quite some time, because when Cartoon Network leaks their own content, they don't do it halfway, baby. This entire episode, the entire first quarter of the first hour-long special of this show, was uploaded onto the Cartoon Network app as a preview of the event. And in case you guys were misinterpreting my tone, I think that was a stupid idea. Now granted, this is the episode in which the least happens out of all of these 4 episodes, and it's the one that's most connected to the events of the last Steven Bomb. So I can understand why they would want to air it at the end of the Steven Bomb and not as part of the Wanted event. So air it after the Steven Bomb and don't air it as part of the Wanted event. It's that simple. All ranting aside, though, this was a really good episode. Steven, a captive of Topaz and Aquamarine, is on his way to Homeworld after confessing to being Rose Quartz, which I guess he kind of technically is. He seems resigned to his fate until he learns that Lars is with him. Suddenly he wants to get free and return Lars to Earth. He still doesn't care whether or not he's taken to Homeworld, but he doesn't want Lars to suffer because of his choice. So as they spend the entire episode absorbed into Topaz, Steven and Lars try to make plans to get a hold of a nearby gem destabilizer and get themselves free so that they can, I don't know, take the ship over, I guess, and fly back. I don't know what they plan to do, honestly. And you see Lars start to work through some things. He and Steven continue their recent pattern of bonding with one another. But their plan has a bit of a flaw, and it's that Topaz is literally right there, listening to everything they say. However, the emotional stuff between Lars and Steven actually turns Topaz around to their side. Topaz gems, being permafusions, have a unique bond with one another, so Topaz is in a unique position amongst Homeworld gems to understand what it feels like to have people who are close to you. She sympathizes with Steven and Lars and agrees to help them, but Aquamarine catches on. Topaz, though, almost overpowers her, almost poofs her. It isn't until Aquamarine reminds Topaz of what might happen to her because of that, until Aquamarine regurgitates the threat of Homeworld, that Topaz falls back in line, and the episode ends with the two individual Topaz, carrying Steven and Lars to separate locations because they have arrived at Homeworld. And a bit unfortunately, because I was really starting to like their characterization, that's the last that we see of Aquamarine or Topaz this entire special. And not a whole lot really happens here. A foundation is laid, I would say, for Topaz to eventually come around to the Crystal Gem's side should she ever be given the opportunity. Like I said, there is some more development of Lars' character, but nothing here is really resolved in any significant way. Probably the most interesting things in this entire episode were a couple of lines spoken by Topaz and Aquamarine. Confirmation that the two halves of Topaz do have a very strong emotional bond was kind of a big deal because she's a Homeworld gem. And Aquamarine's response to Topaz almost mutinying against her, almost being used very loosely in this situation because technically speaking, it was a mutiny, was also pretty interesting. Aquamarine didn't have to give Topaz the chance to fall back in line. After Topaz let her go, she could have wrecked Topaz, used the gem destabilizer to poof Topaz and took her off to be shattered. But she didn't. She seemed almost relieved when Topaz fell back in line, and that suggests that she was relieved that she didn't have to report Topaz, which suggests that she may actually have a bit of affection for Topaz, and that there may be a soft side to her character that we haven't seen yet. Overall, if they were going to show us any episode from the special ahead of time, I'm glad it was this one, because by comparison, so little does happen here. But I still thought this was a really good, really emotional episode. The Topaz stuff, in particular, was really strong. Topaz has barely been in the show, and she's already become one of my favorite characters, simply because of how much potential her design, her personality, everything about her brings to the show. But, of course, quite literally, this episode was only the beginning.